Shri Radha Krishnaya Namo Namaha. At first, I offer my prayers in the lotus feet of Lord Shri Radha Krishna. I also offer my humble respect to all of you. Today, from UDDHAV Gita, also considered as the last message of Lord Shri Krishna, we'll be listening the second chapter where Lord is instructing the Yadus and his dear friend and devotee Uddhava. The holy words are as follows. The Lord said, "What thou sayest to me, O Blessed One, is indeed what I have wished to do. Brahma, Shiva, and the Lords of Being desire my going back to heaven. Indeed, I have entirely finished the task of the gods for which, at the request of Brahma, I incarnate myself with my partial manifestation or Balarama. This line, which is thoroughly burned by the curse, will come to destruction through mutual fight, and the sea will submerge the city on the seventh day. O noble soul, as soon as I leave the world, it will be shorn of its well-being and will soon be overtaken by Kali, the spirit of the dark age. Thou too should not stay here after I leave the earth, for, O good soul, men will be addicted to evil in the iron age. Giving up the love for thy kinsmen and friends and renouncing everything, roam thou over the world with evenness of vision, fixing thy mind wholly in me. Whatever is cognized by the mind, speech, eyes, ears, and the rest, know it all to be a figment of the mind, a phantasmagoria and withal doomed to pass away. The man of uncontrolled mind falls into the error that there is a plurality of objects, and this error leads to merit or demerit. The differences of action, inaction, and evil action concern only the man who has ideas of merit and demerit. Therefore, controlling the senses and thy mind, behold this universe as spread out in the self, and behold the self as resting in me, the Supreme Lord. Possessed of knowledge and realization, with thy mind satisfied with the realization of the self, and being the very self of all embodied beings, thou wilt not be thwarted by obstacles. Beyond the reach of both merit and demerit, will, like a child, desist from prohibited activities, but not through a sense of evil, and perform enjoined actions, but not through an idea that it will conduce to merit. Friends of all beings with the settled conviction due to knowledge and realization, and beholding the universe as consisting of nothing but me, no more comes to grief." Sukha said, "O king, being thus commanded by the Lord, the great devotee Uddhava, desirous to know the truth, prostrated himself before Lord Shri Krishna and said, Uddhava said, O Lord of Yoga, O thou treasure of the yogis, thou embodiment of yoga from whom yoga emanates from my liberation, thou hast recommended to me the path of renunciation known as sannyasa. O infinite, I considered this renunciation of desires as difficult for worldly minded people, and the more so for those who are not devoted to thee, who art the self of all. I am but a fool, being passionately attached to this body and its appearances, which are the creation of thy Maya, and considering these as I and my. Gently so instruct thy servant, O Lord, so that I can faithfully carry out what thou hast taught me. O Lord, even among the gods I find no other teacher of the self than thee, who art self-effulgent, the truth, the Atman for Brahma, and all other embodied beings are deluded by thy Maya and consider the objective world a reality. Therefore, afflicted by sense and dispirited, do I take my refuge in thee, who art unimpeachable, infinite, and eternal, omniscient, the Lord of the universe, who dwellest in the changeless Vaikuntha, who art the supreme being Narayana and the friend of a man." The Lord said, "Very often in the world, men who have truly discerned the truth about the universe deliver themselves from evil inclinations through their own exertions. This self alone is the teacher of all beings, and specially of men, for it conduces to well-being through direct perception and inference. Those who are of a balanced mind and are skilled in knowledge and yoga behold me in the human body as fully manifest and endowed with all powers. There are many created cities such as those with one, two, three, four or many legs as well as without legs. Of these the human body is my favorite city. In this, men who have controlled their senses directly seek me, the inscrutable Lord, through attributes such as the intellect, etc., that are perceived, and by means of inference through those indications. Regarding this, they also cite an old tale comprising the dialogue between Yadu of matchless valor and an Avadhuta. Seeing a learned and young Brahmin, Avadhuta, roaming fearlessly, Yadu, who was versed in religion, asked him. Yadu said, O Brahmin, free from action as you are, whence have you got this excellent discernment, attaining which you roam over the world like a child, although you are a sage? Most often men exert themselves for virtue, wealth, desire, and inquiry about Atman, and that too with the motive of gaining longevity, fame, and prosperity. But you, in spite of your being able, learned, dexterous, well formed, and possessed of mellifluous speech, neither work nor exert in the least, as if you were an idiot or lunatic or a ghoul. While people are being scorched by the forest fire of lust and greed, you are not heated by the fire, being free from its influence like an elephant in the midst of Ganga water. O Brahmin, do tell us who asked you how you derive bliss in yourself, alone, untouched by sense objects and living a solitary life. The Lord said, being thus asked and honored by the intelligent Yadu, who was a devoted to Brahmins, the noble Brahmana addressed the king, who had bent himself low in reverence. The Brahmana said, I have many teachers, O king, whom I resorted to through the intellect, receiving wisdom, from whom I roam on earth at large. Listen who they are. The earth, air, sky, water, fire, the moon, the sun, the pigeon, the python, the seed, the moth, the bee, the elephant, the honey gatherer, the deer, the fish, the courtesan Pingala, the osprey, the child, the maiden, the arrow maker, the snake, the spider, and particular insect known as Brahmakita. These, O king, are the 24 teachers whom I have resorted to. From the characteristic traits of these I have gathered all my lessons. O grand sense of Nahusha, I am going to relate to you which lessons I have learned from whom and how. Listen. The man of steady intellect should not, even though oppressed by creatures that are themselves under the sway of destiny, swerve from his path, being conversant with this fact. This is the trait I have learned from the earth. The good man should learn from the hill how one should always direct one's entire action to the good of others, and one's very birth should be absolutely for the sake of others, while as a disciple of trees, he should learn how to be at disposal of others. The sage should be satisfied with merely ministering to the vital functions and not with things pleasing to the senses, so that knowledge may not be destroyed and the mind and speech frittered away. The yogi moving amid sense objects, possessed of diverse characters, should not be attached to them, keeping his mind absolutely free from their virtues and shortcomings like the wind. Even though entering material bodies and earth and associating with their attributes, the yogi with his eyes always on the self is not affected by those attributes like the winds by orders. Even though living in the body, the sage through his identity with the self should reflect on the unity, non-attachment and sky-like trait of the omnipresent Atman, which runs as a substratum through all movable and immovable things. As the sky is not touched by things which are the products of fire, water, and earth, nor by clouds driven by the wind, so a man should not be touched by things which are the creations of time. Pure, genial by nature, sweet, and a source of imparting holiness to men. The sage, resembling water, purifies all, being seen, touched, and praised by them. Bright, resplendent with tapas, powerful with no receptacle for food except the belly, and eating everything, the man of self control, like fire, is not polluted. Sometimes disguised, sometimes patent, being resorted to by those who desire welfare, he eats everywhere from donors, burning their past and future evils. The omnipresent Lord, pervading this gross and subtle universe created by his own Maya, acts in the shape of different things, like fire in combustible things. The states from birth to death belong to the body, not to the Atman, like the digits of the moon, occasioned by the time whose march is inscrutable. Birth and death, though ever assailing bodies through the massive velocity of time, are never witnessed of the self, as in the case of the flames of fire. The yogi accepts sense objects through the sense organs and returns them at the due season without being attached to them, like the sun, the water through its rays. Like the sun, Atman, established in itself, is not perceived as admitting of varieties, but when manifesting itself through an adjunct is looked upon by dull-witted people as becoming identified with that. One should not cherish too much affection or attachment for anyone. If one does so, one is smitten with affliction, like the poor pigeon. A pigeon built his nest on a certain tree in a forest and lived there for some years with his partner. The pigeons, with their hearts tied in a bond of love, lived a family life, fixing their gaze on each other in close companionship, each intent on the other. In that forest, they together went through such acts as lying, sitting, roaming, resting, talk, sport, and eating without any fear. Whatever the female bird who pleased her partner and was agreeably treated by him wished for the other. O king, fulfill those wants even at the cost of much trouble, for he was a slave to his senses. In course of time, the good female bird had her first conception and laid eggs in that nest in the presence of her mate. In due season, some young birds with tender limbs and feathers grew out of those eggs, the inscrutable power of the Lord fashioning their features. The happy pair, devoted to their offspring, reared the young ones, listening to their chirping and delighted by their sweet accents. They were cheerful, and their wings soft to the touch, their warblings and graceful movements, and their going out to meet their partners gladdened the latter. The two birds, with their hearts attached to each other in love, beguiled by the Lord's Maya, reared their young ones with no higher outlook on life. One day, the pair went in search of food for them and roamed about for a long time in that forest with this object. A fowler rambling in woods at will saw them flying near their nest and caught them by spreading a trap. The parent birds, who were always eager to bring up their young ones and had been out, returned to their nest with food. The female pigeon, finding her young offspring caught in the trap and weeping, rushed at them, crying and much aggrieved. The poor mother bird, fettered by many a tie of love through the Lord's Maya, herself fell into the trap, even though seeing the young ones caught in it, for she was beside herself. The poor male pigeon too, finding these young ones who were more to him than his own self, as well as his beloved partner who was match for him, caught in the trap, wept sorely afflicted. Alas, behold my calamity, unlucky and wicked that I am. Therefore I have been satisfied and have attained the consummation of life. My home, which conduces to the threefold end of life, is gone. Now that my wife, who was a match for me and always agreeable, who looked upon me, her husband, as God, has ascended to heaven with her virtuous children, leaving me behind in this lonely house. For what purpose should I desire to live in this deserted house, miserable and afflicted, a widower with all my children gone, to whom life would mean nothing but woe? Even though seeing them caught in the trap, almost in the jaws of death and struggling in that pitiful way, he too lost his senses and woe begone fell into it himself. The cruel fowler, getting the pigeon who was intent on family life with his partner and the young ones, was satisfied and went home. Thus, the miserable family man, with his senses uncontrolled and taking delight in the pairs of opposites, maintains his family and, like the bird, comes to grief together with his belongings. He who, attaining a human birth, which is like an open gateway to liberation, is attached like the bird to the family concerns merely, is considered as one who has fallen from his status. Thus concludes the first chapter from Uddhav Gita, the last message of Lord Shri Krishna. Thank you for listening. Shri Radha Krishnai Namo Namaha.